All right, so in our most recent video, we went through and kind of laid out the homepage here, showed you how to use the photo gallery widget and update your images. And in this video, we're going to dig into the contact form. But before we do that, I want to show you something really important with Snaps. Now, Snaps is a web-based builder, or web-based editor, which means it's constantly kind of refreshing and auto-saving while you're building out your site. So if I go in here and I were to change, the title of this section right here and then save that by confirming, you're going to see up here in this top section, these three dots kind of animate. It's saving, and then you get a check mark. It's now saved, right? So everything is kind of auto-saving for you in the background. Now, obviously, the speed at which it does that and how often is dependent upon your internet connection, how fast your internet is, what sort of bandwidth you got. So, always a good idea to kind of back up your work as you go, which we actually have that built in as well. So if you head over here to settings, on the left-hand side, you're going to see backup site. You see I've got a bunch of these kind of backups, and I can simply go ahead and restore to a previous backup. Now, when you restore, it is going to update any changes that you have made, SEO updates, scripts, all this, as well as obviously the design and layout. It wouldn't affect the live version of your site until you actually publish, but if I do hit restore, it is going to refresh the old version of the site that I just had. You'll see that title now, even though it had been saved, is now gone. And if you wanted to create a backup, it's as simple as going back to this backup site, and we just say, demo backup. You just name it. It has to be a unique name. Hit save. See that demo backup is already taken, so I just call it demo backup 2. It's going to tell you the time and date that save happened, and now that site is backed up. So usually when I kind of start a new working session, I'll back something up, and then I'll do it again at the end. And then as well, if I'm going to be messing with anything with the site that I haven't done before, or doing anything more complex, sometimes it's a good idea to back up right before you start that kind of a process. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into contact forms, which is really probably one of the most important pieces of your lead gen site, because now you've gotten somebody from a Google search or an inbound link now to your site, and it's time to convert, either generate that phone call or that form fill. And so a couple tips in regards to making your contact forms perform better and convert more of those visitors into new leads. Just to be thoughtful of the kinds of information that you're asking for in your contact form. Now, it goes without saying, the more pieces of information you're requesting from someone, the lower your conversion rate's going to be. So just having name and email is going to give you a lower conversion rate than if all you asked for was somebody's name. Obviously, if all you ask for somebody's name, you're going to have a very high conversion rate. You ask for name, email, phone number, and services, obviously it's going to be lower. At the same time, you do want to qualify your leads for your business owners so that by the time somebody fills out a lead form or places a phone call, that you have a qualified prospect for your business owner. The other thing you want to look at is the order in which you ask questions. Now, when somebody can see all of the questions in kind of one fell swoop like they do here on the page, it might be less of an issue, but still a good idea to kind of consider the order of things. So I might actually take these services and drop this up here, because the email and phone number are probably the most sensitive information. If you ask for that first, you might only see kind of a slight difference in conversion rate, but every little percent helps. The more leads that you can generate from the traffic that is coming to your site, the better. So why not set yourself up for success? So I'm going to order the kind of list of questions that I've got here. Some business owners may require a photo, a site photo, or if they're like a collision or auto body shop, a photo of a vehicle, something of that nature. There's all these different field types that we can add and choose from, including file attachment. So I could say, hey, send a photo of your pool, and they could basically click on that link and then upload a photo. I'm not going to include that on this particular form, but you can see there's a number of different form options if you're using the built-in Snaps form. Now, most of you, if not all of you, should be on Lead Generated, and as you get set up on Lead Generated using those forms, I am actually already working with Patrick on getting a lead generated widget built into Snaps. In the meantime, you can use kind of those HTML embeds, and there's a couple other workarounds to get your information from your Snap site into lead generated and using those forms. But as you get things kind of up and running, just getting something started with, our basic contact form widgets, you can see are very robust and flexible in what you can do. Okay, so let's go down the list here. Now, if we go over to the EDH Pool Cleaner site, you see how we got first and last name separated. So now if I wanted to do that here, we could. I would just hit add field, and I'm going to name this last name. I'm going to move this up under this guy, and I'm going to call this first name. But you can see my layout is now kind of a little wonky. That's because these field sizes are different. So down at the bottom of the field, you'll see this is at 100%, meaning it's using up 100% of that column width. So I'm going to drop this down to 50%, and I'm going to go to last name and do the same thing, change that to 50%. So now we've got that layout that I like. I'm going to make this a required field, and email and phone are also required. We're good to go there. So now I just need to add in the service options. Now if I wanted, I could choose radio buttons if I wanted them to be able to select multiple, or same thing with check boxes. But in this case, I'm going to choose a drop down just because I want them to pick their kind of like primary service. What is the primary service you need? Because I want to limit the number of choices they're going to have to make. Even sometimes giving people multiple options, while it might be good for a business owner to get those kind of different service types, I really I want to, again, increase my chance of getting that lead to kind of fill out this form. So just making them make one decision versus selecting from a bunch of different options, and whether they need to do pool maintenance. I don't know if I need acid wash or not. You might get a little bit of friction. So again, totally up to you and what you choose to use on your forms. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and pull over the different services that we're going to want to include in this drop down, and then I'll be right back. There we go. So I've gone ahead and updated all the different kind of drop down menu items. I'm going to make that a required field, and if I preview, I'm going to get a chance to see what that looks like with my drop down. I like it. Now, last couple of things I'm probably going to want to update on the form is this submit button. I want to change that call to action to something that's a little more specific. I might even say get my instant quote, and you can add kind of this reCAPTCHA validation on your form if you want or not, which helps to avoid getting more kind of like spam form fills and things. Again, up to you. I'm going to go ahead and leave that on in this case. And then the last thing we probably want to do before we set up our submission recipients and integrations is actually name the form. Now this is really beneficial even if you're not going to show the name, the title, which I typically don't, but it's really helpful with some of the integrations like our Google Sheets integration. So if I were to name this, EDH Pool Cleaner Leads, and then hide this, I'll show you where that comes into play in just a moment. Next thing we're going to want to set up is our submission recipients. So this is whoever we want the leads to go to. So I might drop in my email over here, Gabriel@snaps.ai, put in a comma. If I had a business owner, I could put in their email here as well too. Now, note if I put a space in front of this, it's not going to work because Snaps thinks that the email is including that space, which you can't have spaces in emails. So you just need to make sure it's there's no spaces all the way through. You just put a comma to separate any email addresses, and then you're good to go. The subject line would just be kind of exactly that. When you and whoever else is getting these notifications receives that email, what's the from name showing and what's the subject line. So I do like to format that and kind of tailor that to the specific site, and or let them know that the leads are coming from me. So I'd say, pool lead from Gabriel Ryan. And then maybe the sender name, I just put leads by Gabriel, and it would show as such. So now I've set those submission recipients. Important to do. You can obviously post these leads through to any sort of like tracking email address as well, or if you have a VA or you have somebody kind of following up with these leads, but you want to set this submission recipient. Obviously, all the form responses are backed up here inside of Snaps, and you can access them inside of Snaps themselves, and we'll go over that in some other training videos, but for the most part, I like getting an email. I like getting that notification as leads start coming through, especially as you're building out a new site and ranking it and getting traffic for it. In the beginning, there's no traffic going to the site. So as soon as leads start coming through, I want to get those notifications so I'm aware when my site starts popping off, right? Because then we can really kind of lay on the gas. If I go over to submission actions, now this site that we have here has a thank you page that is already kind of like built into the template. And I can show you kind of how to lay out a thank you page later. Pretty straightforward, especially when you're just kind of dragging things around with Snaps to create this kind of landing page after somebody submits the form, which I really like to do because it gives you another shot at getting that inbound phone call. Now, there are some more advanced strategies that we're going to go over, later in this training and in other trainings about what you can do with this traffic, because once you have somebody's attention, you want to keep that conversation going. You want to continue to keep them engaged, which means you can continue to monetize as well too. You look at some of the best in the business. You look at mymove.org. They're really great at this. Lending Tree, Home Advisor, they're all following these principles where they continue to keep those customers engaged. Whereas a lot of times what I'll see is somebody on their submission form over here, might just use, if I go to submission actions, they're just going to use this kind of built-in thank you message and not use the redirect. So if I had this turned off, if somebody filled out this form, they're going to get a thank you message, which is great, but I call this a lead gen dead end because you went through all the work of getting someone to your site. They even filled out your form. They converted and became a lead, and now you're just saying, thank you so much, we'll see you later. You want to continue engaging with that prospect. And one really easy way to do that is by adding a thank you page and redirecting them to that page upon submission. So I just toggle redirect, and then I pick the specific page that we want to redirect them to, which in this case is the thank you page. Now, this error message would show up if you had some sort of issue or error with them filling out their form so that they would know that. So I would at least pay attention to what shows up in this error message. We've got one in there by default. I never change it. But now my submission recipients and submission actions are set up. If you have kind of any additional tracking that you want appended, you can go ahead and pop that in here, but we don't need that at this moment. Now, last thing I'm going to look at over here is our integrations panel. Now, all of you should be using Lead Generated. It's an incredible CRM for managing the lead flow through all of your lead gen properties, for managing your GMBs, any SEO clients that you might have. It's a great tool even for prospecting and things. But I'm always a big believer in having backup and redundancies. And then, what we're going over right now is the built-in Snaps contact form. Okay. With Lead Generated, you're going to want to be using the Lead Generated forms, and Patrick and I are currently actually working on building out a Lead Generated contact form widget to make things even easier. But in the meantime, if you're using this kind of built-in form, we've got some really cool things in integrations. Probably my favorite is this Google Sheets integration. So what this allows you to do, and I'll show you how to set it up here in just a moment. Basically, it just takes all of your leads and form fills and posts them into a Google Sheet. Now, if you're familiar with Zapier and other kind of automation tools, there's a lot that you can do with those leads once you get them over into something like Google Sheets. Not to mention the fact that, again, in some of the advanced training we're going to go over, just because you generate a lead one time doesn't mean that you can't re-engage that lead, re-monetize that lead. My background is in kind of the digital advertising space and financial publishing space, and basically in building lists and building lists of people that had opted in and requested information, which is what is happening here. This is very valuable information. It's very different from when you hear about like people selling data, right? Selling, third-party data of, names and addresses of business owners, still very valuable, for prospecting efforts and doing outreach and cold calling and those kind of things. But in this case, somebody came to your site, in this case, requesting information about, pool maintenance or acid washing, you name it. Those leads are very, very valuable. So for you to have those and kind of keep those archived in one spot is really important, not to mention the fact that you can then also run automations and things once you collect that data. So setting it up from the beginning, even if you're not going to do anything with it from the start, really important. So to set up this Google Sheets integration, all I have to do is click on the form itself, go over here to Google Sheets, and Snaps is going to ask me to authenticate my Google account. So I'm going to click on sign in with Google. It's going to take me to another page. I'm going to authenticate my account, and then I'll be right back. Awesome. Okay, cool. So now we have authenticated our Google account with Snaps. I can choose an existing spreadsheet. What I prefer to do is actually create a new spreadsheet because this is the first time I'm using this particular form. Now, if I had already created a spreadsheet from a form on this same site, I could go ahead and connect it. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just click Create New Spreadsheet. And in the background, what's happening is Snaps is now creating that sheet over in Google, and it's making the connection between this form and that Google Sheet. And there we go. All right. So the job is done. You can see which Google account. It's my Gabriel@snaps.ai account, the assigned spreadsheet that was created, and I can even open it directly here from within Snaps. And right now, it's just a blank Google Sheet. But as soon as I publish this site, I can go ahead and then run a test lead through my form, and that test lead will populate over here in my Google Sheet with the header of, name, what services are you interested in, phone number, and email. And then I'll have an archival list of every single lead that was ever generated through this particular site. Again, very valuable, not to mention the automations and things that you can run on it down the road. So the last thing I may want to do is, I put in this request a quote today. I'm going to delete that so it's a little bit tighter. Now I've got my form. I've got everything kind of laid out. I've got my photos and graphics ready to go. I am about dialed in on this homepage. The last thing I really need to do is kind of tidy up some of the look and feel, because while yellow is fine and dandy, I could leave this color. It's probably not that big of a deal. Clarity is really important, and so I want to update the look and feel. So this looks like a pool cleaning website, which means I should probably be using like some blues and greens in my colors. Again, I'm not a designer. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I do want to make sure it matches up. So we'll go over that in the next video.